They told humanity we were provisional members. That was the first lie. The second lie was quieter. Polite. Wrapped in ceremony and applause inside the floating marble halls of the Galactic Council. Your species has shown promise, High Speaker Vorkal announced, his silver exoskeleton gleaming beneath the chamber lights. In recognition of your resilience, Earth will be granted protective status under Council authority. Protective status. On Earth, the media called it a triumph. Markets surged. Politicians congratulated themselves. Old men who had survived the Cold War watched the broadcast with narrowed eyes and said nothing. Because protection is just a softer word for control. The terms came quickly. Humanity would dismantle 70% of its deep space fleet. Our Mars shipyards would be inspected. Our orbital defense platforms would be integrated into Council command structure. In return, we would receive trade access, medical technology, and, most importantly, security from the Ziran Dominion. The Dominion. An empire that did not negotiate, did not threaten, did not warn. They sterilized. Entire systems reduced to silent rock. When the Council displayed holographic footage of Ziran warforms, vast, biomechanical constructs tearing through alien cities, humanity felt something familiar. Fear. But also recognition. We'd seen monsters before. Sometimes in mirrors. Admiral Jonah Reyes stood alone on the balcony of the Council's orbital embassy above Earth, staring down at the planet that had birthed every war story worth telling. A junior Council attaché floated beside him, tentacles twitching politely. Your people are fortunate, it said. The Council has never offered protection to a species so young. Reyes didn't look at it. Funny, he murmured. Where I come from, when someone says they'll protect you, it's usually right before they take your wallet. The attaché made a wet clicking noise. It didn't understand humor. Most of the Council didn't. The official integration ceremony was grand. Banners of 100 species rippled in artificial gravity. Earth's representatives signed the accession compact. And just like that, humanity handed over its fleet registry. 48 capital ships. That was the number submitted. 48. The Council analysts reviewed it, cross-referenced it, and approved it. They didn't ask why a species that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times in a single century would stop at 48. 2 weeks later, the Ziran struck. Not at Earth. At the frontier world of Ketha Prime, homeworld of Vorkal's species. The Dominion fleet arrived without warning, tearing through outer defenses in minutes. Council battle groups scrambled to respond. That was when the Council invoked Article 7. All provisional members were required to provide immediate military support. Humanity's fleet was mobilized. Reyes stood on the bridge of the battleship Resolute, watching tactical projections flicker into existence. The deployment pattern made his jaw tighten. We're not reinforcement, he said quietly. His tactical officer swallowed. No, sir. Human ships were being positioned in the forwardmost vector, directly between the Dominion vanguard and the Council's retreat corridor. A shield. A disposable one. The Council fleet remained behind a defensive formation, their heavier dreadnoughts safely buffered. Reyes opened a direct channel to Council command. Vorkal appeared, his expression composed. Explain the formation, Reyes demanded. Your vessels are uniquely suited for close-quarters engagement, Vorkal replied smoothly. Your casualty tolerance is statistically higher than most member species. Casualty tolerance. Reyes let out a short, humorless laugh. You mean we bury our dead better? This is a necessary sacrifice, Vorkal said. For the stability of the galaxy. The screen went dark. On the bridge, silence hung heavy. Then the sensors screamed. The Zirans emerged from warp like black blades tearing through reality. Hundreds of warforms unfolded in synchronized precision, their hulls absorbing starlight. They did not broadcast. They fired. The first human cruiser vanished in a flash of white plasma. Another split in half, debris scattering like sparks from a forge. Return fire. Reyes roared. Rail cannons thundered. Plasma lances streaked across vacuum. Human ships surged forward instead of retreating, closing distance in a maneuver that made several Council observers gasp. Boarding pods launched. "That's suicidal," one Council strategist whispered over an open channel. "No," Reyes muttered, watching marine feeds flicker across his display. "That's personal." Inside a Ziran carrier, Sergeant Malik Kwan kicked through a molten breach point and opened fire. The warform drones moved like insects made of blades. "Ugliest damn bugs I've ever seen," Kwan shouted, emptying a magazine into a cluster before detonating a shaped charge. His helmet cam cut to static seconds later. The human line buckled. Ship after ship took catastrophic damage. And still, the Council fleet held position. Observing. Calculating. Sacrificing. Reyes watched casualty numbers climb into the thousands. He felt something inside him go very still. "Signal Mars," he said quietly. His communications officer hesitated. "Sir, that protocol hasn't been authorized." Reyes' voice dropped to a low growl. "It has now." A narrow beam transmission shot out, encrypted beyond Council decryption standards. 3 words. "Black Orchard active." On the far edge of the solar system, beyond Pluto's orbit, hidden in the cold dark where no Council inspector had bothered to look, massive structures powered up. Shipyards that had never appeared on any registry. Construction platforms wrapped in stealth fields. And behind them, a fleet. Not 48 ships. 212. Built in silence. Built with technology quietly reverse-engineered from every shared Council system. Built with one assumption. Trust no one. Back at Ketha Prime, the human line began to fracture. "Admiral," his XO whispered, "if we hold this position much longer, we're finished." Reyes nodded slowly. "Then we stop holding." He opened all fleet comms. "Human vessels," he said, voice steady despite the carnage around him. "You've done your job. Now we do ours. Begin tactical withdrawal on Vector Echo 7. The Council command channel erupted instantly. "You are ordered to maintain formation." Vorkal thundered. Reyes cut him off. "Watch and learn." Human ships broke formation, not in panic, but in pattern. They retreated along a precise corridor. The Dominion pursued, sensing weakness. Predators chasing wounded prey. What they didn't see were the thousands of stealth mines seeded weeks earlier along that exact vector. As the first Ziran warforms crossed the threshold, space itself detonated. Singularity charges collapsed inward, creating cascading gravitational distortions. Dominion ships twisted, crumpled, imploded. The vacuum lit up with silent annihilation. And then something else appeared on every sensor in the system. Mass signatures. Hundreds of them. Emerging from the outer dark like a rising tide. Council analysts froze. Vorkal stared in disbelief as the feed magnified the incoming armada. Human hulls. Black. Unmarked. Enormous. "Impossible," he whispered. "They declared 48. Reyes stood on the Resolute's bridge, blood on his sleeve, eyes locked on the expanding formation behind him. "We did," he said softly. The hidden fleet accelerated into the flank of the Dominion. Rail cannons fired tungsten rods at near-light speed. Ziran carriers shattered. Entire squadrons vanished under coordinated missile saturation. In less than 6 hours, the Dominion vanguard ceased to exist. The battlefield fell silent. Burning wreckage drifted. Human casualty reports stabilized. Reyes finally reopened the channel to the Council. Vorkal's composure was gone. "You deceived us," the High Speaker said. Reyes gave him a tired smile. "You positioned us to die," he replied. "We positioned ourselves to win." Behind him, 200 human dreadnoughts held formation, engines glowing, weapons primed. And they weren't turning back toward Earth. They were facing Council space. Because humanity had just learned something important. We weren't the youngest species in the galaxy. We weren't the weakest. We were simply the only ones honest enough to admit what we are when cornered. And the Council had just cornered us. The Council capital system had never known fear. Its worlds were layered in defense grids, wrapped in political immunity and centuries of diplomatic arrogance. Wars happened far away. On borders. On colonies. On species considered replaceable. Not here. Not in the shadow of the Galactic Council's shining ringworld. And yet 212 human warships now hung in perfect formation at the edge of their inner perimeter. They didn't fire. That was the terrifying part. They just waited. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Jonah Reyes stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was clean again. Pressed. Medals polished. He'd buried enough men to justify every ribbon twice over. Council fleet scrambling, his tactical officer reported. They're forming a defensive lattice around the capital. Reyes nodded. Good. Let them burn fuel. The main view screen flickered. High Speaker Vorkal appeared, no ceremony this time. No marble chamber. Just a dim command center filled with agitated alien officers. You have made your point, Vorkal said, voice tight. The Dominion threat has been neutralized. Withdraw your forces. Reyes tilted his head. Neutralized, he repeated. You mean the vanguard we destroyed while you hid? A murmur rippled through the council command chamber. You misunderstand interstellar strategy, Vorkal snapped. No, Reyes replied calmly. I understand it perfectly. You used us as a casualty buffer. A statistical variable. Vorkal's eyes flashed. Your species volunteered. Reyes smiled without warmth. So did every private in every war you've ever studied. Doesn't mean the generals weren't counting bodies like ration packs. Silence. Reyes stepped closer to the camera. Let's drop the theater. You assumed humanity would bleed quietly. You assumed we'd be grateful for scraps of technology and a seat at the edge of the table. He gestured toward the starfield behind him, toward the armada. We built our own table. Inside the Council's military network, alarms suddenly flared. Defense satellites blinked offline. Orbital cannons powered down. Entire squadrons reported command and control failures. Vorkal's expression shifted from anger to confusion. What have you done? Reyes didn't answer immediately. He let the panic breathe. Months earlier, during joint fleet integration exercises, human engineers had been granted limited access to Council systems. Smiling technicians with coffee mugs and tired eyes had installed compatibility patches. And buried inside those patches were ghost protocols. Backdoors. Not to seize control. Just to deny it. A simple truth of warfare. If you can't win, make sure the other side can't either. We've deactivated your primary defense grid, Reyes said evenly. Temporarily. Temporarily. Vorkal hissed. Long enough for you to listen. On Earth, the broadcast was being watched in bars, living rooms, veterans' halls. Old soldiers leaned forward, hands wrapped around glasses, recognizing the rhythm of brinkmanship. Reyes wasn't here to glass the Council capital. He was here to negotiate from the high ground. You violated Article 7, Reyes continued. Mutual defense of member species. Instead, you calculated acceptable human losses to preserve core Council assets. That is standard wartime calculus, Vorkal said. Not for us. Reyes' voice hardened. We don't send allies to die while we sit behind shields. A Council admiral pushed into frame, voice shaking. If you fire on this system, every member species will unite against you. Reyes gave a soft chuckle. Fire. Admiral, if we wanted your capital gone, you'd already be dust. He snapped his fingers. On cue, one of Earth's dreadnoughts discharged a single rail round, not at a planet, not at a city, but at an empty stretch of space near a decommissioned asteroid facility. The tungsten rod struck with the force of a small extinction event. The asteroid ceased to exist. Shockwaves rippled across local space. Every Council officer understood the message. Precision. Restraint. Choice. We didn't come for genocide, Reyes said quietly. We came for correction. Vorkal straightened, regaining a sliver of composure. And what correction does humanity demand? Reyes turned slightly, as if consulting something off-screen. In truth, he didn't need to. He'd rehearsed this moment since the first human cruiser exploded under Ziran fire. First, he said, dissolution of the sacrificial draft protocol. The chamber stirred. That protocol allowed provisional species, like humanity, to be deployed in high-casualty engagements without Council fleet parity. It was buried in fine print. Signed in optimism. Second, Reyes continued, equal voting power for Earth in all military decisions. Outrage erupted. Vorkal raised a limb for silence. And third? He asked coldly. Reyes met his gaze. A permanent joint defense command. Co-led by humanity. Any future engagement requires unified fleet deployment. No more expendable shields. The councillors exchanged rapid signals in their native light frequencies. They had expected rage, bombardment, maybe even invasion. They had not expected structural reform. You threaten us, Vorkal said slowly, yet claim to seek partnership. Reyes' jaw tightened. We learned from you. The words hung heavy. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a new transmission cut across all channels. Unknown signature. Council sensors lit up with fresh contacts at the edge of the system. Ziran signatures. Dozens of them. Not the vanguard. The main fleet. It had followed the human armada's energy trail straight to the Council heart. Vorkal's composure shattered. This is your doing, he accused. Reyes' eyes flicked to his tactical display. The Dominion fleet was larger than anticipated. Massive. Bristling with weapons that dwarfed their previous assault. He exhaled slowly. Actually, he said, this is yours. The Council defense grid was still offline. Their fleets were disorganized. Their capital was exposed. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council faced annihilation on its own doorstep. Vorkal's voice lost all arrogance. Restore our defenses, he demanded. Reyes shook his head. Not alone. The Dominion fleet began to form attack vectors. Council worlds panicked. Civilian ships fled. Emergency sirens echoed across planets that had never heard them before. Reyes opened a secure channel to all human captains. Gentlemen, he said quietly, this is the part where we prove we're better than they are. His XO glanced at him. Sir. We could let the Dominion tear through them, Reyes said. Call it cosmic justice. He paused. But we don't win by becoming what we hate. He reopened the channel to Vorkal. Here are the terms, Reyes said. You sign the amendments. Now. In blood if necessary. The Dominion fleet accelerated. Seconds stretched. Vorkal hesitated, centuries of superiority warring with survival instinct. Reyes leaned forward. Choose, he said softly. Your pride, or your people. The Ziran weapons began to charge, black hulls glowing with lethal energy. And for the first time since first contact, the Council realized something profound. Humanity wasn't the galaxy's greatest threat. We were its last line of defense. If we chose to be. The Ziran main fleet moved like a tidal wave of iron. Across the Council capital system, their formation unfolded with cold, mechanical precision. Thousands of warforms, layered in attack wedges, shield matrices interlocking like scales on some ancient predator. On the bridge of the Resolute, the tactical display bled red. Impact window in 4 minutes, the operations chief reported. Council defense grid still offline. Their fleets out of formation. Admiral Jonah Reyes didn't blink. On the central screen, Vorkal's image flickered back into view. Gone was the polished statesman. In his place stood a leader staring into extinction. The amendments are being ratified, Vorkal said, voice tight. Sacrificial draft protocol dissolved. Equal military authority granted. Joint command structure authorized. Reyes nodded once. Transmit confirmation across all member networks. It is done. Reyes turned to his comm officer. Restore their defense grid. A silent command pulsed outward. The ghost protocols reversed. Council satellites surged back online. Orbital cannons powered up. Shield lattices shimmered into existence around the ringworld. Across the system, Alien admirals stared in stunned disbelief as their weapons returned to life. "You could have left us defenseless," Vorkal said quietly. Rhea's eyes remained on the incoming Dominion fleet. "We're not you." Then he raised his voice. "All human vessels, combat formation Titan. We take the outer shell." 212 dreadnoughts shifted in synchronized precision, engines flaring as they accelerated beyond the Council perimeter. They placed themselves between the capital and the oncoming storm. Again. But this time, it wasn't as expendable bait. It was as equal partners. The Dominion opened fire. Space ignited. Particle lances carved through vacuum. Human shields flared under impact. One destroyer vanished in a white blossom of plasma. "Return everything," Reyes ordered. Rail cannons thundered. Missile bays emptied in coordinated salvos. Human ships executed aggressive flanking maneuvers that made Council tacticians gasp. "We didn't fight pretty. We fought to win." A Ziran supercarrier broke through the first line, its hull bristling with bioorganic weapon arrays. It targeted the Council ringworld directly. "Intercept." Reyes barked. 3 human cruisers surged forward, absorbing fire meant for the capital. One split open, venting atmosphere and debris. The other 2 rammed the supercarrier at near-relativistic speed. The collision tore both vessels apart in a violent cascade of energy. On the Council command deck, silence fell. "They sacrificed themselves," one alien officer whispered. Vorkal's gaze hardened. "No," he said softly. "They chose." The battle devolved into chaos. Human Marines launched boarding operations mid-combat, breaching Ziran hulls with brutal efficiency. Combat feeds showed close quarters fighting in corridors of living metal, rifle fire, plasma arcs, shouted curses. "Clear!" someone yelled over an open channel. "Clear my ass," another voice snapped. "It's growing back." Dark humor crackled through the void. Even facing annihilation, humanity mocked death. But the Dominion was vast. For every warform destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. A massive command node emerged at the rear of their formation, a grotesque structure pulsing with synchronized energy. "That's their coordination core," Reyes muttered. "Take it out, we break their spine." Council admirals hesitated. The core was deep within Dominion lines. A suicide run. Reyes didn't hesitate. "All Titan elements, with me." The Resolute accelerated hard, flanked by 8 of the largest human dreadnoughts. They punched straight through the Dominion center, shields collapsing under concentrated fire. "Structural integrity at 40%, his XO shouted. "Still better than my first marriage," Reyes replied dryly. They broke through. The Dominion core loomed ahead, vast, bristling, alive. "Fire everything." Railguns discharged in unison. Missile salvos streaked across space. Plasma beams carved into the core's surface. It adapted. Shields reconfigured. Energy spiked. "It's charging a system-level discharge," Tactical warned. "If it fires, the Council capital is gone." Reyes made a decision in less than a heartbeat. "Prepare ramming vector." His bridge crew froze. "Sir." "That's an order." The Resolute angled directly toward the Dominion core. The remaining dreadnoughts mirrored the maneuver. On the Council command feed, Vorkal stared in horror. "They intend to." Reyes opened one last channel. "Hi speaker," he said calmly. "After today, no species stands alone." Then he cut the transmission. The human ships engaged full burn. At the last possible second, escape pods launched in every direction. The Resolute and her sister dreadnoughts slammed into the Dominion core like kinetic gods. The explosion was not a flash. It was a newborn star. Energy rippled outward, shredding nearby warforms. The coordination node ruptured, its psychic synchronization collapsing. Across the battlefield, Dominion formations faltered. Ships drifted, uncoordinated. Vulnerable. Council fleets seized the moment. For the first time, they charged forward alongside humanity. Orbital cannons fired in disciplined volleys. Alien dreadnoughts joined human formations, overlapping shields, cross-covering firing arcs. United. Within 2 brutal hours, the Dominion fleet was reduced to wreckage and radiation. The capital system survived. Barely. Debris fields glittered where fleets had clashed. Escape pods drifted among the ruins. Search and rescue operations began immediately. Human and alien crews working side by side, pulling survivors from shattered hulls. Admiral Reyes floated in an escape pod, staring through a cracked viewport at the burning remains of the Resolute. His comm crackled. "Admiral," came Vorkal's voice, softer now. "We owe your species a debt that cannot be quantified." Reyes let out a slow breath. "Good," he replied. "Start by remembering it." But even as relief settled across the system, human long-range sensors detected something unsettling. Fragments of the Dominion fleet weren't retreating randomly. They were regrouping. And deeper scans revealed something worse. The fleet that had attacked the Council capital. It hadn't been the Dominion's full strength. It had been a test. Reyes closed his eyes briefly. War wasn't over. It had just escalated. And now, for the first time in galactic history, the Council would face it with a species that didn't fear escalation. Humanity had bled for its seat at the table. Now we intended to redesign the entire damn room. The aftermath of the battle was quiet, but the quiet was heavy. Silence in space carries differently. It stretches across light years, through debris fields, and even through the senses of those who survived. Humanity's dreadnoughts drifted among the wreckage, engines humming softly, weapons still warm from destruction. The Council fleets hovered, cautious, awed, and afraid. Admiral Jonah Reyes stood on the bridge of the new flagship, the Indomitable, a vessel that alone could have destroyed half the Council's fleet if need be. His eyes scanned the holographic map, noting where Dominion survivors fled, where Council losses could have been worse, and where humanity had left an unmistakable signature: competence, ruthlessness, calculated mercy. Vorkal's voice came through the secure channel again, quieter this time. "Humanity, you have proven yourself beyond precedent. I misjudged your species." Reyes leaned forward, voice cold and unyielding. "You didn't misjudge us. You underestimated us. Twice. Once at Ketha Prime, once when you thought we'd bleed quietly. That was your mistake. Not ours." Council analysts in every system paused as Indomitable sensors picked up something unusual. Small, fast-moving signatures weaving through the debris. Human strike teams, elite marines, were boarding Ziran hulks, extracting intelligence, salvaging tech. None of it was wasted. Every byte, every piece of alien hardware would be dissected, studied, reverse-engineered. Vorkal's tone shifted, edged with fear he could not hide. "You are reorganizing the entire theater, on your own. Are you aware of the potential consequences?" Reyes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Consequences? No. Opportunities. Every single one. The galaxy has spent centuries playing by rules that only protect the Council. We're rewriting them. With or without your approval." Back on Earth, civilians watched the transmissions in awe, disbelief, and something strange: pride. Old war veterans who had seen humanity's darkest moments smiled grimly. They had known what the Council would never admit: humans thrive under fire. We bend, we adapt, we bite back. And when cornered, we don't just survive. We dominate. The remaining Dominion remnants attempted to regroup on the edges of Council space. Reyes activated Indomitable's jump drives, propelling the fleet forward faster than anyone expected. Human vessels pierced the black like knives, interdicting the fleeing warforms. Every encounter was swift, precise, terrifying. Survivors reported human tactics that were impossible to anticipate: coordinated ambushes, feints, psychological warfare. Messages were broadcast in Ziran frequencies: mocking, taunting, demoralizing. Vorkal's channels were flooded with complaints from Council admirals. "They are improvising. They are unpredictable." Reyes chuckled softly. "That's the point." When at last the remnants of the Dominion were cornered in the Ilix Nebula, the Council finally realized the true genius of humanity's approach. "We didn't just destroy the enemy, we made sure the enemy learned the lesson in terror." Not one Ziran pod survived to recount the event without trauma. Not one council admiral could claim victory without acknowledging the humans beside them. And then Reyes made the final decision. The human fleet would withdraw, not entirely, but strategically, leaving enough presence to ensure compliance and enough distance to maintain independence. Humanity would not become another puppet of the Council. We would not simply join the galactic hierarchy. We would reshape it. Vorkal's voice came one last time, quiet, almost reverent. Your species, you are something extraordinary. Reyes leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. Extraordinary, he said, is when the galaxy tries to bury you, and you plant a forest in the crater instead. Behind him, the fleet powered down from maximum alert. Ships glided through debris fields, escorting council vessels back to their stations. Humanity had won. Not with diplomacy, not with pleading. With strategy, ingenuity, and ruthless honesty about what we were capable of. But in the quiet corners of space, Reyes' mind remained restless. The Zirans were not gone, they were learning. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of explored systems, other empires watched, noting the rise of a species that laughed in the face of annihilation and rewrote the rules of engagement without permission. The galaxy had underestimated us. Twice. And now, it would never make that mistake again. Humanity had survived betrayal, engineered revenge, and emerged not just as a player, but as a force that could bend stars themselves to its will. The Council had learned the hard way. Never corner a human. Never underestimate what desperation, intelligence, and sheer audacity could achieve. As the Indomitable drifted silently past the remnants of war, Reyes allowed himself a brief smile. Somewhere between dark humor, bitter revenge, and calculated mercy, humanity had found its place, not at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, not as a shield, not as cannon fodder. At last, we had rewritten the stars in our own image. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity arrived and left nothing standing that dared to doubt us.